Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam, Trilokyam Sacharacharam, Tatpadam Darshitam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Twameva Mata cha Pita, Twameva Bandhuscha Sakha, Twameva Vedyad Ravinam, Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, Twameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahana Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So this evening we begin the 12th chapter, Bhakti Yoga, probably one of the most famous in the Gita. And at the end of the 11th chapter, Krishna has extolled the value of us worshiping the form of the Lord, surrendering our life totally to Him. So let's move on into the 12th chapter. Enough light for you?
Mm-hmm. Arjuna Vacha Evam Satata Yuktane Bhaktasvam Paryupasate Ye Chapyaksharam Avyaktam Tesham Ke Yoga Vittamaha. Arjuna said, those devotees who, ever steadfast, thus worship you, and also those who worship the imperishable, the unmanifested, which of them are better versed in yoga?
So, here is an important question that many of us have. Is it better to be a devotee and worship God? There's the slogan, the only thing you need to know about God is you're not it. God is the supreme. To turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. Or as Patanjali says in Yoga Sutra, Ishvara Pranidhana, trustful surrender to God. Or to worship the imperishable, meaning that which is nameless, formless, unthinkable, unknowable as an object of cognition, meaning the self. Which is better? And people have been arguing over this for centuries. And we have an answer here. Let's see how the Lord resolves this doubt going on.
Shri Bhagwan Uvacha Maya Vesha Mano Yemam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Paryupetaste Me Yuktatama Mataha. The Blessed Lord said, those who, fixing their mind on me, worship me, ever steadfast and endowed with supreme faith, these, in my opinion, are the best in yoga.
So here, Krishna says, those who are devotees, who fix their mind on Krishna, or Lord as you understand, Lord, who are devoted to it. He says here, those are the best. Now, wait a minute. Through most of the Gita, he's been talking about the imperishable, the self. In Kena Upanishad, which we just finished up on Saturday, the first chapter, each one of the mantras ends with it is not that which you worship here. Now Krishna is saying you should worship here. Worship God with form. So there's a big question mark that appears on Arjuna's forehead. So Krishna goes on to explain why, for most of us, the path of devotion is superior. Going on.
These two together.
Okay.
Ye tvaksharamanirdeshya mavyaktam paryupasate sarvatra gamachintyam cha kutastamachalam dhruvam samniyam ye indriyagramam sarvatra samabuddhaya te prapnuvanti maveva sarvabhuta hite rataha. Those who worship the imperishable, the indefinable, the unmanifest, the omnipresent, the unthinkable, the unchangeable, the immovable, and the eternal, having restrained all the senses, even-minded everywhere, rejoicing over ever in the welfare of all beings. Verily, they also come unto me.
So here he says, okay, we've talked about the path of devotion, but the path of self-inquiry, where we negate all form. I'm not the body, I'm not the prana, I'm not the feelings, I'm not the thoughts, I'm not the ego sense. Koham, who am I? The imperishable, the unthinkable, that which is kutastha, is the word he used. That's one of my favorites. Kuta is a boundary. Sta means to stand, to be still or establish. The mountain just is. All the storms move around. The path of jnana yoga, as opposed to bhakti yoga. And Krishna here says, well, the path of the worship of the imperishable, they also come to me. Now, mind you, going all the way back to the second chapter, Arjuna says, what are the marks of the person of steady wisdom? How do they sit? How do they stand? How do they walk? How do they talk? And Krishna says, when a person casts off all the desires of the mind, O Partha, and is satisfied in the self, by the self, then they're said to be a person of steady wisdom. And now in the 12th chapter, he says, yeah, worship Worship God with a form. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and soul and mind and strength. Seems to be a contradiction. He does say both paths will take you to the infinite, but he seems to prefer the path of devotion. Now let's find out why. Next verse.
क्लेशोऽधिकतरस्तेषा मव्यक्तासक्तचेतसाम् अव्यक्ता हि गतिर्दुःखम् देहवद्भिरवाप्यते. Greater is their trouble whose minds are set on the unmanifest. For the goal, the unmanifest, is very hard for the embodied to reach.
So, what does he mean by the embodied? Some people think it means if you're in the body, practice devotion. We can only worship the unmanifest when we leave the body. But there's a deeper meaning to it. When Krishna says embodied here, he means identify with the body. If we are in the mind state, where the mind is to a tremendous degree grossified, and even though I've studied a lot of Advaita Vedanta, I feel like a person, and I, Jim, have these problems, and I have these anxieties, and I have these stresses, and I have these drives and things like that. That is what Krishna means by the embodied. Now listen carefully. That yogi is the greatest of fools, who is firmly identified with the ego and denies the existence of a personal God. Because then all you have is your puny willpower. So you read a lot of the Vedanta and you have an intellectual agreement of non-dualism. But if you have a heart filled with desire and a mind filled with attachment, saying that it's not real, self alone is, and what you're left with is, I, the individual, need to solve my problems, and I have to muscle my way through life, and I have to just power through. Anybody know this state? So what Krishna says is, if you are in the state of being ego identified, and it's pretty firm, great is our trouble in endeavoring to worship the unmanifest. If, on the other hand, your mind is predominantly sattvic, meaning you have an intense spirit of vairagya. Remember Shankara's definition that desire to give up attachment to all experiences gained through the senses and identification with any form of self, starting from the body up to and including the form of Brahma, the creator, is termed Vairagya. But if deep in our hearts we say, maybe next lifetime, this time, I want to win the battle of life. I want to conquer. I want to have it all. I want the relationship. I want the house. I want the job. I want the money. I want the title. And I have to be honest with myself. I want it. No blame. Frankly, it's far better to be honest with ourselves than to pretend, oh, I'm just a failure as a yogi because I'm not being detached today. Well, you had no intention of being detached today. So this is why the 12th chapter is so important. For those of us in that state, see that the beauty of the tradition is it meets us at wherever we are in our spiritual unfoldment. Remember chapters 3, 4, and 5. For the person who's driven into kartavya, obligatory action, we have karma yoga. Here for the person who's firmly identified with the body. Krishna says, yeah, the path of self-inquiry is available, but it's really hard for them. It's better to take on the path of devotion. Now, this is not necessarily for the rest of your life. Doing selfless service, karma yoga, doing devotional practices, bhakti yoga, purifies the head and the heart and makes it fit for the deeper flights of contemplation. Who of us has studied the great text Tripura Rahasya? Any of you? Yes, no?
I think so.
No?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, you think you have?
With you.
So remember Parashurama. Parashurama, filled with rage, he's killing all the Brahmins because there was some family incident. He's killing all the Kshatriyas. He's a Brahmin. He's killing all the Kshatriyas, making lakes of blood. Finally, he gets in a fight with Lord Ram, who whoops his ass. So he gets humiliated. And so he's developed a distaste for all his rage and anger. So he's marching around, muttering. He comes upon this sage, Samvarta. Samvarta gives him this very simple, deep, mystical truth. Parashurama, mind like a brick. But Samvarta says, head down the road, talk with the Tatriya. He'll straighten you out. Parashurama goes to see the Tatriya. The Tatriya, with his yogic powers, looks into his mind and says, this guy's got a mind like a brick. Okay, what I'm going to do is initiate you into the gospel of Tripura. Worship the goddess with flowers, with mantras, with visualizations. Get lost. So Parashurama does this for 18 years. it 12 years? A lot of years. Finally, he gets pure enough. He begins to think, what was it that Samvarta told me? And you know, I've been doing this ritual for all these years, and I feel a little better. But I only feel better when I'm doing the ritual. It can't be perfect if it's dependent on an action. You know, you go do kirtan, you feel great for the hour and a half you're at the Krishna Das concert, but after that, true story. So it was, what, 2-3 years ago that we went last time to see Krishna Das? I can't remember. Walk outside the theater, there's all these people smoking their doobies. But Krishna Das wasn't enough. I need more something. Over and over again. So finally, Parashurama is pure enough. His mind is more sattvic. Then the Tatriya can begin to initiate him into the Jnana Kanda. Before was the Karma Kanda, the ritual portion. So you and I must be honest with ourselves. Are you the kind of person who flips to the back of the book to find out what's the most advanced teaching? Many people, because they don't have the humility to be honest about what their current mind state is, they waste a lot. So here Krishna is saying, the way you determine it is, are you predominantly ego identified? If so, probably the path of devotion will work for you. Any thoughts on this? Now, some people just have a difficult time with a form of a personal God. Just doesn't work for them. So in Viveka Chudamani, after Shankara has gone through the qualifications of a fit student, he then says, others say that bhakti alone is supreme. Gita. And then he says, the constant attempt to live up to our true nature. That's also devotion. All right. Any thoughts, questions on this? Yes.
So I find that most of the time, I can only speak to my frame of reference. I find that I'm mostly ego identified all the time, except when there's more mindfulness.
Yep.
And ascent, then that's when Vairagya becomes a possibility.
And your intuition has led you to devotional practices. For example, you've got a chanting guru. Am I wrong?
So I guess my question for you is, how would you advise a student who's kind of similar to me, who relies on the chanting practices to anchor her inner self, but is very drawn to Advaita's ideas? And
I think it's great. Do the two. Do not let philosophical inconsistency be a barrier to peace of mind.
In fact, it makes it more interesting.
Yeah. In the end, the Vedanta is also illusory. Only you are real. The Vedanta is another methodology. But what Krishna is saying here is if you're triggered and anxious and fearful, pray. If your mind gets quiet, do self-inquiry. Or in the struggle of life, your Kurukshetra, if you can do self-inquiry and that's useful in being able to drop stuff, then use it. I think each of us have what I call the yogi's bag of tricks, a little carpet bag that you carry around with you. Or better yet, in these days, your backpack, your yogi's backpack. And the rule of thumb is this: the grosser the mind, the more meditative aids we need. Chanting the name of the Lord is one of them. The subtler the mind, let the practices go. I remember chatting with a student, and he had a teacher say that, oh, he's supposed to say his mantra 1,008 times every day, and he's been doing this for years, and he's able to do it. But, he's quieter than that practice now. Let it go. Change the way you do your mantra. Let there be some silence. Let there be some space. But one person is not in the same state all the time. You can be very sattvic Sunday night, but when you show up at the office on Monday, you're pretty identified. Does that make sense?
Exactly, makes sense.
Yeah. So we want to be able to stand back and diagnose my mind. If I'm reactive, if I'm stressed, if I'm anxious, if I'm identified with the body, hang on to the feet of the Lord or the goddess. If things are, you can drop that practice. Daniel, do you have anything to add on this, maybe from the Dayananda tradition? I'm not sure how Carol would have approached all this.
No, I don't have anything to add. Oh, sounds right. Makes sense.
Yeah. So like Mike, you've talked to me, you're intuitively led to devotional practices. Knock yourself out. Krishna says it's perfectly, that's exactly where you're supposed to be. That doesn't mean not to do the Vedanta, but just understand that when we're ego identified, it's harder. What does he say? It's troublesome for those who are identified with the body. Very important point. Essentially, it's sequential. We do selfless service and devotional practices to purify the head and the heart, which then make it fit for deeper practices. All right, next verse.
Let's do together. Ye tu sarvani karmani mayi samyasya smatparaha ananyenaiva yogena mam dhyayanta upasate teshamaham samudharta mrityu samsara sagarat bhavami nachirat partha Mayyaveshita chetasam. But those who worship me, renouncing all actions in me, regarding me as the supreme goal, meditating on me with single minded devotion or yoga, for them whose minds are set on me, verily I become, ere long, O Partha, the Savior, to save them out of the ocean of finite experiences or the samsara.
So, one of the earliest names for God, we've talked about this before, is Surya, the sun. And I like it because the sun just shines. So just like light and heat is the nature of the sun, you and I, though, can spend the whole day indoors with the curtains drawn. And not avail ourselves of the light of the sun. Likewise, Ishvara, the Lord of this universe, Tripura, the goddess who's in charge, Lord Krishna, God the Creator. Its nature is love. And there is a salvific principle. God's going to save your sorry ass if you let it. God's not neurotic. There's no God that says, I just don't like the way you've done your hair today, Simon. Crisis. Oh, I like the way he's praying today. Makes me happy. Blessings. No such God. God's not neurotic. God's not anthropomorphic in that way. The love of God, the mercy of God, the grace of God, the salvific principle of God, the saving grace of God is a constant. But you and I can shut ourselves off from that divine energy. How? I like to use the example if you've driven in cold weather in a car with a battery that gets corroded. I don't do cars even still have batteries like that? I don't even know. They do.
They do have batteries.
They do. So if you've driven like in the East Coast where there's snow and stuff like that, the corrosion builds up on the terminals. And if you've been through that,
Yes.
So you turn the key, nothing happens. And the battery's not dead. There's just corrosion that's impeding the flow. So in the old-timey days, you'd have a brush with a wire brush. Is that what they still use?
Yes.
You pull the stuff off, you go, then you go inside, vroom, starts right up. So what is it that shuts us off from the divine current of life? Jiva Bhavana, the feeling that I'm a person, and the kleshas, the afflictions, the doshas, the defects that follow from spiritual ignorance. And the biggest one is fear. Self-centered fear. I'm not enough. There's not enough. The world's not enough. And I have to struggle and beat the world over the head with my baseball bat in order to get what I need to be okay. That very mental state is what shuts us off from the sunlight of the spirit, the battery current of life. Now, what is it that reopens the channel? Ishvara Anaditana. Trustful surrender to God. To turn my will and my life over to the care of God. What does that imply? God cares. The love of God, the grace of God, the forgiveness of God, the mercy of God, the saving power of God, the shelter of God is a constant. The variable is yours and my egoism. When egoism gets thick, what thickens it? Self-centered fear is the activator of all of my character defects. Why am I afraid? Because I've lost touch with this notion God's in charge. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. Shorthand form, I can't, he can, I think I'll let him. This is the true meaning of the Christian notion of repentance. In the Catholic Church, you go in and you confess your sins, and the priest gives you a penance, do 10 Hail Marys, 10 Our Fathers, or something like that. Crime and punishment. It's like traffic cop, pay your fine. That's so wrong. The Greek word from which our idea of repentance comes from, the very word, is metanoia, which means to turn around and go the other direction. So when I'm in the throes of spiritual ignorance and egoism, from now on, we're going to do things my way. I mean mine, I mean mine, I mean mine. And we're not punished for it. We are punished by it. We shut ourselves off from the power source, like the corroded battery terminals. We're running on our limited little ego, and then life gets more and more burdensome. So I need to get out my spiritual wire brush, take a look at my resentments, take a look at my fears, take a look at my attachments, take a look at my desire for revenge, punishing, competition, envy, jealousy. These are all forms of fear. And endeavor to give them to God. Surrender. In the movie The Wizard of Oz, when the witch flies across the sky and she paints in the sky, "Surrender, Dorothy." Remember that one? It's a great mantra. Surrender, Dorothy. Stop the struggle. Give it to God. And this turning of the mind towards the infinite is what starts to open up the channel of grace. And then that salvific principle starts to work. Those of us who've been raised in a liturgical church like the Catholic Church, we go to communion and you receive the body and blood of Christ. Why do we do that? What's it supposed to do?
It brings us into Christ as one.
You receive what you are, become what you receive. We literally eat God. It turns the whole idea of the old Jewish sacrifice on its head. But the idea is God gets inside us and changes us from the inside. But more than a magic cookie or some wine, the real operative part of it is surrender. Turn towards the end. And in this verse, we're given some specific instructions on how to do that. So let's parse it thought by thought. So you give us the first one. I think these were two verses together, if I remember right.
Yeah.
What's the first idea?
But those who worship me, renouncing all actions in me.
Yes. So worship. Worship means to love, to adore, renouncing all actions in me. So I'm not working for Facebook or Salesforce or the county. I'm working for Krishna. I'm working for God. My customers, my clients are not these horrible people out there. They are God. Make everything sacred. What pops into my mind, there's a very, very well-known American author, Christopher Isherwood, who happened to be gay. And his guru was Swami Prabhavananda in Los Angeles. Wonderful, wonderful Swami. And Isherwood fell in love with this younger fellow. And he goes to the Swami and says, "What should I do?" And the Swami said, "See him as Krishna. Everything. Take Krishna into the bedroom. Next idea.
regarding me as the supreme goal.
Yes. So when we start the spiritual life, what I want is to succeed in life, to get a relationship, to buy a house, to make a lot of money, and I'm stressed, so maybe meditation will help that a little bit. I'm going to do that after I do Pilates and before I get a massage. And what Krishna's saying here is after a while, the whole thing turns upside down. And I love the term that Ram Dass used to have. He called every aspect of our life grist for the mill. The goal of my life is union with God. And my relationships and my responsibilities and my work are just the places where I work out and let go of the various forms of ego that get in the way. And the practice is always the same. Let go and keep your heart open. Let go, let go, let go. Make Krishna, make God your supreme goal. Not the next rung up the corporate ladder. Doesn't mean not to work hard and advance up the corporate ladder. I'm not saying that. But if that's your worldly goal and you neglect Krishna, knock yourself out. See how you feel. See how you feel. Next idea.
Meditating on me with single-minded devotion or yoga.
Yes. So there's a wonderful little book in the Christian tradition called The Practice of the Presence by Brother Lawrence. And he was just a simple monk. I think he was a cook, wasn't he, Mike?
I don't know the book, but that's what you've said before.
And his whole practice was whatever he was doing, how would I feel? How would I speak? How would I think if the master were right here next to me? Meaning Jesus for him. But for you and me, if Krishna were right there next to you. You were having a hard effing day at the office and Krishna were right next to you. Wouldn't you like to say, oh Lord, this sucks? Wouldn't you want to do that? You can. You can. Because he is always with us. Always with us. We spend so much time in the Vedanta talking about the self as God. I am Atma Brahma. The self is also transcendental. God is the Lord of the universe. So always, always doing our best to walk and talk. One of the most powerful ways to remember this is to chant the name of simple, short mantra. Do you need some water, Mike?
No, I got a hot drop here, but thank you.
Next idea.
For them whose minds are set on me, verily I become ere long the Savior, to save them out of the ocean of finite experiences
Yes.
or the samsara.
So it's our turning to the infinite that allows that grace to flow. Another slogan I like: if you don't feel close to God, who moved? It's okay to be powerless. We are not helpless. We are powerless. They are not the same. God is our ever-present help in trouble, as the Hebrew psalmist says. Ever present, ever present. But our job is to turn, to keep remembering. And then as we move through life, not my will, but thy will be done. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse. I love this chapter.
Mayyeva mana adastva mayi buddhim niveshaya.
I'm sorry, did I get all the pieces of the last verse?
You did.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Start again.
Mayyeva mana adastva mayi buddhim niveshaya. Navasishyasi mayyeva pata urdhvam na samshayah. Fix your mind on me only. Place your intellect in me. Then you shall no doubt live in me alone.
So the best that we can, fix your mind on God. And our understanding of God can vary through the day. God is mother, God is father, God is lover, God is child, God is friend. God is vast, powerful. God is present, intimate. Fix your mind on God throughout the day. Again, this is the power of a mantra. If you see the movie Gandhi, which I just love, at the end when he gets shot, Ben Kingsley goes, "Oh God." And that isn't really what happened. Gandhiji's mantra was Ram. When he was shot and he knew he was dying, he died with the name of the Lord on his lips. So it's of value to have what we call an Ishta Devata. God is you understand God. Krishna has said, in whatever way people approach me, so am I to them. What's the next idea?
That's it.
Fix your mind.
Fix your mind in me only. Place your intellect in me.
Yes. So think about God as much as you can. It is okay to wrestle with spiritual ideas. I was talking with a fellow about back in the 80s when I was working with people with HIV/AIDS. And many of them have been raised as Christians, and Once they became aware of their sexual orientation, that they were gay, they left the church. And then they came to study Vedanta when they got a diagnosis of AIDS. But a very interesting thing happened. Their immature adolescent theology started to emerge. Am I being punished because I'm gay? Does God hate me? The church said God hates me. And what I found is the Vedanta didn't work for them. What we needed to do was wrestle with their theology. Okay, let's look at Christian theology. Let's look at your Christian scripture and see whether or not, as your theology matures, you see that in fact God is a loving God. And then you can come to peace. You have to give up childish ideas. But many of us need to wrestle with our ideas of God. You can't surrender to a God that you're afraid of, or that you think is going to judge you or condemn you. Next idea.
Then you shall no doubt live in me alone.
Yes. So try to fill the heart and the mind, the intellect, your whole being with the awareness of the presence of God. What number did we just complete?
8.
Okay. There's only 12 in this whole chapter. Next one.
अथ चित्तं समाधातुं न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम् अभ्यासयोगेन ततो मामिच्छाप्तुं धनञ्जय. If you are unable to fix your mind steadily upon me, then by the yoga of constant practice, seek to reach me, O Dhananjaya.
So if you fall off the wagon and you forget about keeping God in your heart and mind, one of the nice things about being a yogi or being a devotee, being a premi, the lover of God, you can start your day over at any time. Practice. It takes practice. The mind prefers the familiar. Frequently, for some of us, it prefers the familiar to the good. What you look at, you're going to think about. What you look at repeatedly, you will think about repeatedly. Repeated thought becomes habituated thought. Habituated thought sinks into the unconscious and becomes the law of my life. So if I spend all morning worrying, regretting, rehashing old habits, old losses, old hurts, or fear of the future. I was talking with a person just last night. They're 66 and they just went through a divorce. I've only got enough money to last for 10 years. What am I going to do 10 years down the road? I'm terrified. I get that you think that. But worry's not a solution. It doesn't solve any problems. So we have to practice turning the mind from the negative thinking to thinking about God. To turn our will and our lives over to God's care many times during the day, saying to ourselves many times during the day, not my will, but thy will be done. That's how Jesus framed it. But it's very good bhakti yoga. Over and over and over again. And we take our will back. And when I remember, oh, I'm suffering. Why? Because I'm being willful. I'm being controlling. I'm trying to bludgeon life. Stop it. Abhyasa, practice. Let it go. Ah, God's in charge. Have I shared Michael Judge's prayer with you? I know I have with you. He was the chaplain to the New York City Fire Department. He was killed in 9/11. And he had this wonderful prayer. God, take me where you want me to go. Let me meet who you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say and keep me out of your way. I just love that prayer. This is practice. Practice. Abhyasa. All right, next verse.
अथ चित्तं समाधातुं न शक्नोषि मयि स्थिरम् अभ्यासयोग. Oh, I'm repeating myself. I'm sorry. I just did this. अभ्यासेभ्य समर्थोऽसि मत्कर्म परमो भव मदर्थमपि कर्माणि कुर्वन् सिद्धिमवाप्स्यसि. If you are unable even to practice Abhyasa Yoga, be you intent on performing actions for my sake. Even by doing actions for my sake, you shall attain perfection.
So if I can't remember to remember God, do my best to do actions, surrendering my actions to the infinite. Try to dethrone this self-centeredness, this selfishness in terms of actions. Do the same action. Endeavor to give it to God. Here, with one verse, he's making reference to those 3 chapters we studied in the beginning, 3, 4, and 5. Karma Yoga. Next one.
अथेतदप्यशक्तोऽसि कर्तुं मद्योगमाश्रितः सर्वकर्मफलत्यागं ततः कुरु यतात्मवान्. If you are unable to do even this, then taking refuge in me, self-controlled, renounce the fruits of all actions.
Yes. So if you cannot work for God and you forget, at least do our best to let go of my attachment to the outcomes. Krishna says, I am the karma phaladata. I am the giver of the fruits. Do our best. Let God do the rest. And then is there one more or 2 more? What number are we on?
We're going to do 12, and
I think that's it.
there's a few more.
There's more than 12?
Yeah. I'm seeing at least 17.
That's weird. I counted. Okay.
I think there's a total of 20.
Okay.
Should I go to the next one?
Then we'll do this. Will be the last one for the night.
Okay. Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasa ajnanat dhyanam vishishyate dhyanat karma phala tyaga astyagachanti rantaram. Knowledge is indeed better than practice. Meditation is better than knowledge. Renunciation of the fruits of actions is better than meditation. Peace immediately follows renunciation.
Okay. This is a deep one. So we'll quit here tonight and we'll repeat this one next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.